Ni una más. That means not one more. The battle cry is used to protest femicide and violence against women in Latin America. Among the 25 countries in the world having the highest rates of femicide, 14 are located in Latin America. Femicide is a particular type of gendercide, and it has exploded in Latin America. Our heroes today are the brave feminists, journalists, and human rights activists fighting femicide in the region. They fight against terrible odds, and sometimes they pay with their lives. A Mexican university and government study revealed that almost half of Mexican women experience violence at some point in their lives. It's a problem of culture, the culture of machismo. For centuries, Mexico has tolerated and even admired male violence. A second cause for violence against women is drug trafficking. Aided and abetted by corrupt police and government officials, and fueled by endless demand from the United States. Recently, trafficking has taken a grim new twist in Mexico. Traffickers are shifting from drug trafficking to sex trafficking. It turns out that trafficking women is far more profitable and less risky than drug trafficking. In the town of Tenancingo in central Mexico, sex trafficking is the primary economic activity. 10% of residents earn their living from it. The trafficking rings are run by families, just like organized crime in the U.S. Not surprisingly, the increase in sex trafficking is driving an increase in femicide. Mexico now averages 10 femicides per day. Americans must understand that the U.S. has exacerbated the problem in Mexico. There are more than 1,000 factories strung along the Mexican side of the U.S.-Mexico border. Inside them, Fortune 500 corporations pay Mexican laborers $15 per day. Almost half of these workers are women, including teenage women who moved there to support their families. During the last 30 years, more than 1,600 of these young women have been kidnapped and murdered. Investigative journalists uncovered strong evidence that women murdered in Ciudad Juarez had been used for sex in cartel orgies, celebrating successful drug runs. Mexican police and business magnates were implicated too. The women were killed because they had seen too much. Most were still teenagers. Of course, Latin American countries shoulder responsibility too. They do not prosecute crimes against women. In fact, the Latin culture that excuses male violence often shifts the blame onto the woman. Victims of rape and domestic violence are blamed and shamed. As a result, most women do not report these crimes. But change is afoot. In the last few years, Latin American women have protested like never before. They have abandoned their traditional reticence, thronging the streets in huge marches. So, what's next? How do you fight violence against women when law enforcement is unresponsive or even corrupt? There are no easy answers, but the Gendercide Awareness Project is lending its wholehearted support to those pushing for change. Our art exhibit is touring Mexico right now, calling attention to femicide. The exhibit is called Where Have All the Women Gone? Or Donde Están Todas las Mujeres? It spotlights Mexico's femicides and places them in the larger context of global gendercide. We identify femicide as the Latin American form of gendercide. We are careful to recognize that the U.S. has its problems too, most notably high femicide rates for women of color, especially Indigenous women. The exhibit draws crowds and sparks media coverage. Each pair of baby booties represents 10,000 women eliminated from the world population as a result of social causes. The exhibit has given Mexican activists new opportunities to be heard in the media. At the exhibit opening in San Martin, Texmelucan, 3 press conferences were needed to accommodate all the journalists. We reached 200,000 people. Our desire throughout is to play a supporting role to the Mexican human rights leaders already fighting this problem, to amplify their voices and support their work. We are sobered and humbled because some, especially investigative journalists, have lost their lives in the process. We also pay tribute to local women lost to femicide and honor their families. In León, a student at Ibero León University became the face of femicide for her city. In San Martin, Yoko was that face. The young women's families generously allowed us to use their images. Those faces bring home the real and terrible tragedy behind the impersonal femicide statistics. The reality of the threat came home in more quotidian ways as well. Young women told us how they must think and organize every errand, every get-together, every footstep outside their homes to avoid being the next victim. One woman said, "I have really nice shoes that I never wear. No matter how dressed up I am, I wear tennis shoes, so I can run if I have to." A university student told us, "We are so tired from being afraid all the time. We are physically tired from always being afraid." Mexico averages 10 femicides per day. That's roughly 1 femicide every 2.5 hours. As always, the Gendercide Awareness Project seeks not only to raise awareness, but also to take meaningful, practical action. Throughout the Mexico tour, we helped implement practical measures to reduce femicide and help women experiencing violence. In León, for example, the exhibit spurred the creation of youth workshops on healthy masculinity and healthy intimate relationships. Workshops for teen boys challenge the culture of machismo, revealing how men living by its impossible standards experience loneliness, isolation, and depression, and often find refuge in substance abuse. This is to say nothing of the danger for women. Workshops for young women teach them to recognize controlling and intimidating male behavior as a lead-up to violence. In San Martin, Texmelucan, the exhibit so impressed the dean of a local university that she donated 100 scholarships for single mothers to finish high school. To top it off, the Universidad Centroamericana is providing childcare while the mothers are in class. The scholarships will set these 100 carefully selected women on a path to financial independence and enable them to leave abusive partners should that be necessary. The university, in response to our initiative on campus, has organized workshops for women, one on e-commerce, for example, and another on self-defense. Lastly, the Universidad Centroamericana is also formalizing and expanding programs that provide pro bono legal assistance and psychological counseling for women experiencing violence. These practical, preventive measures are the biggest reward we could ask for. We are thrilled and so proud that our exhibit has catalyzed these steps to help Mexican women.